We have the music of a little voice.
Mm-hmm. Yesterday we bought those, what's called those, what are those round cheese with the red wax? It's like, yes, he accidentally ate the wax.
baby bells. Oh no.
Baby bells, yeah.
I'm sure the FDA has already checked that out to make sure it's okay.
Yeah, he's fine. He's fine. Yeah, it's okay. Hello, friends. Welcome, everybody. You probably caught us talking a little bit about how my toddler ate some wax from a cheese baby bell. There won't be any of that happening here, but maybe we should have an event to raise funds where we just eat wax. Hello, friends. My name is Sai Mukda Duangpusai Vongsai, and you could feel free to call me Mooks because all of my friends here, Denise, Hedy, and Katsy, they all call me Mooks. And I want to welcome you to Women of the Sea, Women of Southeast Asia, a conversation among Southeast Asian women poets about their writing and all of the accoutrements that come with holding all of these different identities. Before we get into it, I'd like to have you help me welcome Hedy Tripp, who will be providing us with some grounding this afternoon. Yeah. Hedy.
All right. Hello, family and friends, old and new. I'd like to invite you to place your feet just flat on the surface of where you are at, and feel the earth beneath you, even though it might be through concrete. Feel the land of the indigenous peoples. Here in Minnesota, or Minnesota Makoche, land where the water reflects the clouds, it is the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary land of the Dakota, Anishinaabe, and Ho-Chunk nations. We honor them. Where Katsy is, the land of Pennsylvania belonged to the Delaware, the Susquehannock, the Shawnee, and the Iroquois. We honor them. And I also want to acknowledge the indigenous peoples in the land of our ancestors in Southeast Asia: Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, the archipelagos of the Philippines and Indonesia, countries of Brunei and Timor-Leste, and in my homeland of Malaysia and Singapore, it is the Orang Asli, people of the forest, where the forest is being exploited as we speak, and they fight back to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. We honor them. Thank you.
Thank you, Hedy. So this awesome event is actually made possible from a grant from the Central Minnesota Arts Board. So thank you, CMAB. Thanks also to funds provided by the McKnight Foundation. Yes, woot woot. Feel free to hang out in the chat and talk to each other and to us too, everybody. So we love having a fun time in the chat room as well. So some seriousness, today's program, the conversations and the poetry that will be shared today contains content such as trauma, displacement, sex and sexuality, violence, assaults, and other mature topics. And so we ask our audience to be as present as they are able and to listen to your body. So if you need to leave or you need to turn off the camera or anything like that, just please do that. Please honor what you need to do. And finally, our panelists will be solely engaged in conversation with each other. So it will just be the four of us having some sort of fishbowl conversation. But that doesn't mean that you can't get down with us and get involved in the chat. You can type questions and comments in the chat, because at the end, we will be taking questions, audience questions. And so we'll keep our eyes out for your questions. So welcome, Hedy, Katsy, and Denise. Let's kick it off. Let's have you introduce yourselves to the people. You're all women of the sea and of Southeast Asian heritage. Can you just tell us where you're from, where you're coming to us from? You can be literal, or you could be, of course, poetic with your answer.
I'll start since it's already 1 o'clock my time. My name is Katsi Villaifan. I am a Lao American refugee poet and artist. I run an organization called Lost in the House, which promotes storytelling in the Lao American refugee community through the arts. And I've known Mooks for a very, very long time. And prior to the Zoom starting, I told the story about how we met as chatters in the AOL room. And like, this is before pictures were around, so I didn't know what she looked like. And then we finally met in real life, and then we're like, oh, are you? And so I've been friends with Mooks for a very, very long time, and I'm very happy to be part of this event. And, I was just saying that Minneapolis is one of those great places to be if you happen to be Southeast Asian or like an artist. So I'm glad. I appreciate you inviting me to have lunch with you and share my poetry as well. So thank you for being here.
Denise?
Denise?
You want me to go? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Denise. I am a Vietnamese American. I go by she, her. I was born and raised in Brooklyn Park, so I didn't go too far. I live in St. Paul now, but I'm really just a fan of St. Paul lately. Yeah, I don't know why. I won't go ahead and get into the St. Paul Minneapolis river politics right now, but yeah, I'm happy. I'm very happy over in St. Paul. About me, right, I guess I'm an artist, an educator, and a researcher as well. Right now, I'm doing a PhD in education, focused on arts, culture, and teaching. And I'm more of an interdisciplinary artist, so I do poems, I do puppets, I do children's literature, kind of a hybrid. So that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Denise. And before I let Hedy go, she's got a wonderful poem for us. I would like to invite everyone to please let us know your name and your preferred pronouns, your pronouns, and where you're coming to us from in the chat. We would love to know who's in the room. Okay, Hedy, what you got?
All right. So I put my introduction as a poem because that's how I was feeling. You ask me what I am. I am Eurasian, from a tiny city-state of Singapore in the middle of Southeast Asia. I'm the product of colonialization, Portuguese, Spanish, French, Dutch, British, Chinese, Japanese, American. They all wanted a piece of that pie in which we lay as tender morsels amongst the tropical fruit and honeyed crust. I am Eurasian. I am not white. Never thought of myself as white, but our Eurasian names reflect our forefathers 8-10 generations ago, and deleted from genealogical memory are my Asian foremothers' names and culture. In Singapore, Eurasians were the mediators between West and East. Fluent English is our only tongue, instilled with the force of Christian indoctrination. And fierce loyalty to the crown of England, Eurasian men laid down their lives in World War II Pacific arena, including my father. I am Eurasian. I do not comply with your definition of race. It cuts through the social construct of that color line. So I stand in the middle, my arms open wide, reaching through the windows of my spirit, drawing in the richness of my multicultures and multi-ethnicities. We gather here today from across the seas, from Southeast Asia. Our ancestors are from the other side of this sad ball of earth. Our indigenous siblings are stripped of their forest homes, languished in cement caves of civilization. And in this strange North American land, we are Asian American women trying to decolonize our minds in the racial minefields of white supremacy and toxic patriarchy. We will be visible. Our words will speak up and out in all the languages that we know, resounding with love and life, reverberating pain and grievous sorrow. Poetry, prose, art of all forms, loud in our actions, rousing our spirits, we will not be silent. We are Southeast Asian women. So there I am.
There you are, and there I am, and there we are.
Right.
So in poetry world, we do this snappy thing, right? Because I don't know, we're deep like that. See, even Rasan loves that poem, Hedy.
All right, that's the best.
Who is this lovely baby that's in the room? Because I would like to see a close-up of the cheeks, please, before we get started.
Where is that? Where is that?
This is Malayla.
Oh, Malay, that's my granddaughter.
Hi, grandbaby.
You love your poetry.
Oh,
So cute. Anyways,
thank you.
babies make my gums itch, and so I'm gonna write a poem about that. Okay, question for our poets, Katsi, Hedy, and Denise. So, people often ask, what is the meaning of life? And my answer is always to write poems. Poems, right? Poetry. I feel like life is poetry. So, but to you, what does poetry mean to each of you? What does that mean? What does poetry mean to each of you? And how has it made your life lovely or complicated or anything? What does poetry mean to you?
I'm gonna answer the question first. So I know that not just poetry in general, but just like the English language, this idea of like speaking English was something that I found to, I guess, help cope with being an immigrant in America, because we're confronted all the time with these narratives that in order to do well, or that in order to be trustworthy, or like to sort of be successful, that you have to speak good English. And at the same time, we're also confronted with these images where our people are not supposed to speak good English, and that language is hard and whatever. So I feel like, doing well and speaking English, like that's part of it. And then like to rise above that and write poetry that wins awards or like gets me paid gigs, like sort of like that's just like, I guess like I think of it as like I don't know, I guess like something that my poetry partner Michelle said before is like to use it as a weapon, because people like to use it against us as a reason why we can't do well, and then we turn it around on its head and say, well, look at me, I am using the same language that you use, and look at where I am and look what I can do. And so and I think of poetry as like, like when I think of poetry, I think of performance poetry, because that's the poetry that I experienced first. I mean, yeah, like we all had poetry that we had to read in school, but like I don't know, I close it off. I guess I don't really like associate it. And when I think about the poetry that touched me or that like influenced me, I think about performance poetry, because a lot of it is very like, it's an act, it's multimedia, it's live performance, it's theater. But at the same time, it doesn't have to follow these rules of stanzas and line counts and, syllables. Like you kind of just do whatever on stage, and that is your poem. And when I feel like the flexibility of performance poetry for me, I absolutely love that. Like when I do my poetry, I can like flip it and speak words in Lao, that I can be, I can say whatever I want and like don't have to leave a footnote and be like, oh, I'm sorry that you didn't get it. Like this is my poem. Thanks for coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love it that you defined poetry for yourself, right? Like sometimes when we think about poetry, we think that it is Emily Dickinson or like some other things written by old dead white people or white men, especially, right? But you're, I love that. So yeah, Denise, Hedy?
Sure, I can, yeah. I have a lot of thoughts going through my brain right now. And, a while back when the four of us were chatting, I told a story about my grandma. So I might like kind of go back to that. Just because, what does poetry mean to me? I mean, poetry is one of the oldest forms of art, right? And I think that that's one of the things that I really love about it. I mean, I was an only child. I grew up with a million cousins and everything, but like as an only child, you kind of like figure out like how to entertain yourself, right? And have to keep yourself occupied. So I think for me, like poetry has always been this safe place that's all mine. And I think I've been feeling that so much, especially during the pandemic, you know, like as an interdisciplinary artist, it's like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do all these things, I'm gonna combine them, it's a hybrid, right? But at the same time, when you're under lockdown and you're just by yourself, what do you have? For me, words have always just been very, very comforting to me. And yeah, so I love poetry because of the personal practice. And I think that love has grown, you know, since I was a child, because when I was hanging out with my grandmother who helped raise me and lived with me, she would recite lullabies and poetry and teach them to me all orally, right? So it's, I think no matter whether it's written, no matter where, if there are rules or no rules, I mean, I think poetry is so multifaceted and can be such a beautiful thing that I also don't want to necessarily define it against white supremacy either, you know? Like poetry is so vast. And was definitely here before Shakespeare, before any of these dead white guys. You know, some of them are, you know, I'm fine with learning from them, but they're not the only ones, yeah, out there.
Also, I do like some poetry from the dead white guys, you know.
Yes, I do.
No shade, but still.
They're not the center of the universe.
Thanks, Denise.
Yeah, for me, I've always loved words. And so poetry, I think, was always within me. But I started really putting it down to paper when I was recovering from breast cancer, from a mastectomy. And it really became something that was very healing, to be able to express that into, you know, into paper, to share that with other people, to have an impact, actually. I mean, some of the poetry that I produced helped women get, you know, encourage them to have a mammogram. And that's important. You know, if you don't find it out early, it could become something worse. So, and it became a teaching tool as well. So, so that's where poetry has been for me. And now through Central Minnesota Arts Board, through the grant that I received that allows everyone here to be here, it became more of I am a poet. And I want to give a shout out to Paying Lai Fong, she's somewhere there, yes, as being part of her workshops, being part of the BIPOC workshops. I can hold my own, right? Paying, you think I can hold my own? Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, like Hedy, I was struggling for many years. And then the thing is, if you know, the poetry is inside you and you just have to claim it and feel like, maybe I'm not doing, you know, all those other things, but hey, it's such a big part of my identity and actually the way that I live life, that I see things. So I'm so glad to, you know, see Hedy like going out there and saying, I'm a poet and I'm going to be doing all those things. And she's so resourceful, finding grants for this. And I'm thankful to Mook also for recommending Hedy to come and take my class. So that's how we met. So and poetry is community, especially for BIPOC people and women. And I'm hoping that we will be able to find a Southeast Asian American women poetry community as well. So thank you.
Fabulous. And so Paying is a Hmong American poet, is also part of this. I hope that would be my quest in terms of poetry, prose, memoirs, that we continue this. Are you listening, Central Minnesota Arts Board? Are you listening? Yeah.
Are you listening, funders? Are you listening?
She put a heart there.
You could totally. Oh, yes, Denise. What were you going to say?
Oh, I said you got a heart and a clap emoji. That's all.
Hey, that's all you can ask for. We're just kidding. You could totally, Hedy, you could totally create this like Women of the Sea squad of, yeah.
And that was Mook's brand, actually, Women of the Sea. She came up with that. I like it. SEA, Southeast Asia.
I think we
Yeah.
came up with it together.
No,
We're sitting at a picnic table. Look at me trying to be.
No, you said that because then I said, Laos is the only non-sea area. It's landlocked. It's the only landlocked country of Southeast Asia. Every other country has a beach.
Yeah,
me,
you
and,
gotta
me, and
be-
Mux need to start a club called Laos at Sea.
we need it. Right. We already have a club called Landlocked Laos.
Landlocked Laos. Okay.
Oh, so, Hedy, you talked about poetry being used as a way to create access for people, access to information, right? To connect people to information. Denise talked about poetry as a way to heal and to like remember. And Cassie, you talked about poetry being a sort of like a weapon too, like a tool, a weapon. So poetry to all of you serves a purpose or creates purpose or makes purpose. And I wonder, what are some of the things that inspire your writing? Like, what are some of the topics, issues, themes, or motifs that show up in your work consistently throughout the years that you've noticed?
I would say that it's sort of like what Hedy did, which is like, an introduction to me, right? So instead of saying what I do and if I'm married and where I went to school and whatever, that I can sort of have this poem ready to like spill when it's my turn to talk, And so I feel like for me, inspiration just comes in all forms of whatever I'm going through in life. And, the way that I'm able to put it into words is to write it into a poem. And sometimes it's not a poem. Sometimes it's just thoughts that I have and I just write it down. And then, like I remember when I used to work at an office and I would just have like all of these sticky notes all around me because I would like think of things and be like, oh, and then it would be like all around my desk. And I'd be like, does this even go together? So it's just like nice to be able to have an outlet, to like, even if I have one line that I feel like, oh, like this is really speaking to me right now and I have to like record it and say it. It's nice to have a space where I can just say it and then decide if I want to say it again somewhere else. So a lot of times what inspires me is things that I feel like need to be said. In my early career, when I was touring with Yellow Rage, we would go to a lot of API, Asian American events. And a lot of times they were very East Asian heavy, or if I asked the crowd and talked to them and told them I was from Laos, and they would be like, what, where? And I'm like, I can't believe that I'm at this university with supposedly a very, like a reputation for academics, and I'm being presented and co-hosted by the Asian American Students Union, and I'm saying Laos, and they're all just like, what, and so it's sort of just like, okay, like, all right, you don't know what Laos is, let me tell you what Laos is, and so it's like things like that, things that need to be said for me in the conversations that I've been having. And of course, like, obviously, if I go somewhere and somebody else performs and they have like an amazing poem, and like, I feel like, I don't have to write a poem about this if this person has already done it, like I can always reference them and say, oh, you want to know about this? Here's this person's poem, so for me, I always feel like if it's something that comes up for me and needs to be said, then I'll say it. And if for whatever reason poetry is the way that I'm able to say it, then let me do that. I think the thing with poetry is that it's great because you get the mic and the audience just has to shut up and listen, right? And then like, you're not done until I'm done, And so if I have something to say, I'm going to say it, and you can clap, and you can roar and you can get up and walk out, whatever, but the show's not over until I'm done. And so that's I feel like one of the great things about poetry.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of that, Katsy. When you were talking about Post-it notes, I was thinking about, here, I'm sorry, I'm gonna move this so I can show you guys like just all the Post-it notes I shoved behind my laptop because I was just like, I have to do this performance, I have to hide all of this mess, you know? Because yeah, I have all these notebooks, I have, it's just like, I don't know about you, but I cannot, for whatever reason, get myself to organize all of my poetry stuff into one place. So it's like some of it I'm going to save on my desktop. Some of it is on the Google Docs. Some of it is in a notebook. Some of it is on a Post-it note. It's just everywhere. And my dream, you know, sometimes it's always like, it's going to be in one place. It's going to be fine. And then I can like pull from this when I need it, you know? Yes, poetry is everywhere. It's just everywhere. But yeah, that resonates with me, and like what needs to be said, I think also resonates with me quite a lot too. When it's like I don't have a conscious, I don't think, answer for when I decide, oh, this needs to come out as a poem, this needs to be a show, this needs to be a research paper, you know, like sometimes that's not always conscious, like the research paper, maybe that's more strategic, but when it's art, it's it feels like you do it as you go, and it tells you, you know, like it tells you what it needs to become, right? And I think I tend to write a lot about what we all write about, like home, you know, or looking for it, relationships. And I think sometimes when I try to summarize, like, what do I write about when I sit down and I write a lot, or what are the notes that I need to put down? A lot of it tends to be things I want to say, but feel like I can't, to someone, like one individual, you know, who's dead or alive, or I have like a fractured relationship with, or just it tends to be like letters to the dead or the living. And then it can morph from there, but a lot of the time that's how it starts, where it's like, I can't say this to you right now, so I need to put it somewhere.
And I think actually this is a good time, Denise, if you can share one of those poems. Are you ready? I would love that. And then I'll go, because my poem is tied into the answer to that question.
Okay. Should I and I should do both of my poems right now. Is that right, Mooks? Okay. All right. All right. So when Katsy was talking about a need, I was thinking about this first poem I'm gonna read. It's called Lifting a Rose Gold Sun. And I wrote it, started writing it the night of the Atlanta spa shootings in, what was it, March now, right? So definitely a trigger warning. It's, you know, yeah, it addresses that, and I needed to write it for me. I could not sleep that night. I was just up. I learned about that, what happened, through a Facebook comment, because one of my friends was just like, you know, just said something as though I knew about it already, and I didn't. So I looked it up, and I'm like, what the F, you know? And I saw that he was actually, there was some news about that today, a news update. I don't know if you guys saw it. There was a plea deal. So he pleaded guilty. Yeah, and they're still recommending life in prison, I think. I don't feel any joy, you know, from knowing about the punishment, or I don't feel any, I don't know, satisfaction or anything. I don't know what I feel. But it seems so far away now because so much has happened during the pandemic. But when I reread this poem today to read it to you all, it also felt very recent. So this is called Lifting a Rose Gold Sun. Imagine us alive, cherished and unraped. At least once in your life, feel our blood a gift intact. Raven waved hair, golden eyes unafraid. What Pornhub videos did you watch to get us here? Which Asian woman do you blame for your choices now? We've got better things to do than fuck you. Fuck you. Imagine that not fucking with your ego. You, your gun, and your callow end. You and your bad day only murder will fix. We will live to tell the full truth. You're a failed grandchild, limp, smaller than our sacred gold women you've gunned down here this Georgia day. No shrine could heal your hand. You're but a symptom, a vile lesson we won't allow our states to learn. No, imagine we call our spirits back with fire. We offer fresh, warm soy milk and strawberry cake. We press warm temples to the earth. After years lifting a rose gold sun, we drive our beloved grandmothers home. So that's the first one. I know it's intense. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot I can say about it, but I will let it sit for now and we can talk about it later if you want. The second one that I decided to read is called Matrilineality. So it's also a grandma poem. We had talked about what kind of poem should we read today, and I think this one will also be about grandmothers and mothers. Matrilineality. Here's my grandmother and her lullabies, her recipes, the words she wrote down and the ones she didn't. My father will not take credit for any parts of me that are good. I write with the voice of my mother's mother and the voice of my father's mother, her mandolin singing beside me. Our matriarchs drown out his sound. He said more than enough. We sing with Ho Sung Hoong and the Trung sisters. We write our rebellions into being. Whatever way hands may shape me, I keep the center of my spirit's heart vermilion and true. I carve Wang Am into the mountainside. Our foremothers sing us to vigil and we say Cam ơn for refusing to give yourself up then, and Cam ơn for refusing to be forgotten now. We spell our light into language. We say knowledge for knowledge's sake is sickness. We say let her who is sick with sickness pass on the story, a gift unasked for like a huge bag of moonlight. Eat the cartilage off her bones. The darkness is no predator. I don't write my father's unbodied wounds. I won't turn him into a villain or a victim. I carve my grandmother's lullaby into my wrist for nights with her where I am safe to make my own revelry and revolt. Thank you.
Wow,
Wow, thank you, Denise.
that is.
I think it's so important that artists, especially writers, poets, put what is difficult, feelings, happenings, all of that into our work. And I feel like we are documentarians of our times, right? Because art outlives all of us. And thank you. And thank you for letting us sit with that first poem for a while.
Yeah, thank you.
I can sit with that for a long time. But I'll answer the question in the poem I'm going to read now. And again, I hold all our poems in a very precious place. But this is a little lighter. And it's a poem that I'm dedicating to Mooks because somehow she really likes this poem. So I promised I wouldn't do that. And so sit back and kind of try to enjoy it. There's no fuck or whatever in it. So, but I like those words, but I couldn't find where I could put that in. Never mind. So the title I have at the moment is My First Love, dedicated to Mooks. My first love was intrigued by my fascination for snakes, such sensuous creatures, flexing their ribs, pure muscle, undulating scales, smooth to the touch, pulsating power, tight squeezes, possessing spaces, the epitome of entwinement of sexual encounters. My next brief love was annoyed with my tiniest snake, blind, black, and earthworm-like, nestled in the cup of my bra. Another lover's eyes widened as that tiny reptile slithered in delight around my wet finger. In dark ocean depths, black and yellow bands wave, navigating multi-hued coral, the sea snake's venom most toxic of all. After a sea storm, churned mightily from the deep. My lover steps back as I pick up the slack form of a sea snake left at the wave's foamy edge. I place her in her barrel. The next day, she is dead, and tiny offspring sluggishly move, then die. My would-be lover is not impressed by my father's captive python. So cruelly imprisoned, the creature hits its head against the wire, wearing itself out, coils back in its corner, eyeing that fear-frozen mouse, quivering and trembling, waiting for deliverance as an appetizer. My first lover is puzzled by the rustling of leaves in a glass tank, iridescent green, whiplashing through tiny branches. The grass-green snake should not be captive. There's nowhere to swing, but around and around the rectangular prison. The next night, I don't see her, but I know she is there. There's a faint whisper in the dark tank air. 7 little tails, bejeweled in green. I let them all go back to where they belong. My lover sighs in relief. I now catch and release stinky goddess snakes that poop on your pants in sheer fright. My last lover prefers the warm inside of snakeless beds. And a lot of my poem, this poem comes from personal life experience, very personal life experiences of all the snakes I've met. And what do you think if I should retitle this Of Snakes and Men?
Well, here's the thing. Snakes get a bad rep, right? Like, to me, snakes represent change because they shed their skin and they grow to become a bigger being. They get a bad rep. To me, they also represent the ability to be agile and the ability to go with the flow and to just, there's movements. And to me, snakes are positive things. So when people call me a snake, I'm like, thank you.
Love that a lot.
I'm like, thank you.
Well, obviously I love snakes, so.
I love snakes. I love snakes. Thank you, Hedy.
Okay, all yours.
So each of you, even through your poetry too, Denise and Hedy, you mentioned briefly about the roles that you play in your community and your roles as not just poets, but like people who do good work in the community. You know, Hedy was an educator and is an educator still in many ways. Denise, you also are in education, right? And you even started some sort of like kidlit group, didn't you?
Yeah.
To get people to be more down with
Picture
kids.
book.
Right? Yeah.
The original intent was to encourage teachers to make their own picture books, right? So yeah, we don't have to talk about that right now. I feel like this is about poetry, so I'm in like my poetry brain. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't give you the Kidlit Lab spiel right now. But there, say again.
You can later if you want.
I can. I'll try later. I'll try to get myself my Kidlit brain later. There's just so many hats.
Yeah. That's the thing too. We're not just poets. We wear so many other hats, right? Like Katsi runs Laos in the House, which is this cultural production group, you know. So, okay, I know we want to talk about poetry and our lives as poets, but it is hard to kind of like compartmentalize all of these different roles that we play. So I guess my bigger question is, what do you feel is your are your roles, body roles, as Southeast Asian women artists? How about that? And how does poetry seep into all the different ways that you operate in the world and make art or like engage with community?
Let me answer first in terms of my engagement right now in community is within Central Minnesota through the Arts Board. They're doing an amazing program called Race and the Arts. So some critical conversation around that. We have Create Community. I know my dear friend Asagita is here, and in terms of arts, how important that is, and that whole connection. And then with the Coalition of Asian American Leaders, arts is definitely something that is a bridge to conversations, to better conversations. Yeah.
I think even though my answers is going to be pretty basic, I'll elaborate. But I feel like being who I am is my biggest goal, right? Like and the reason I say that, I think, is tied to my experience of being a Southeast Asian woman in Minnesota. I don't know about you all, but I mean, I know that I felt like growing up, there's just a lot of particular pressures that come with being a Southeast Asian woman. I'm sure it's different for all of our varying ethnicities, right? And the expectations culturally that are different in every direction. And I felt there was a lot of, this is how you should be, this is how you're supposed to be, this is who you are, these are all the things you're meant to do, or what's expected of you. And I think like trying to filter out all of those messages and figure out what I actually want has been a long journey for me, I think, in figuring out my voice as an artist, right? And I think that that's always developing, but being able to, I don't know, be authentic in that to the universe, I think is a personal goal of mine, and is hopefully encouraging, for other people to be who they are, not to be like me, but to be like themselves. Yeah.
My answer is how am I a Southeast Asian woman, or like, what do I feel my role is? I would say that my answer is similar to Denise, and that like, I'm just going to be who I am. But I feel like in this role of a community leader, or like places where people recognize me and like have this expectation, I think that I have to recognize that power that I have to remind people of, others. So like, even though people know about Laos and they say like Lao culture, and I have to remember, okay, like Lao is just one culture in Laos. There's Hmong, there's Klon, there's Mian, there's like all these other, like, don't forget how multifaceted we are, and that like, there's reasons why we have so many words to describe identity. And like, if people want to include all of these pronouns and whatever, like, let them be. And in terms of how I engage now, I actually just started taking Lao classes, and I feel like my role or my ability as a poet means that I have permission to say the things that I want to say in the structure that I want to say, and so that somebody else can't say to me, oh no, you did that wrong. And I'm like, no. This is how I want it to be said. This is how I structured it. This is my sentence, and I'm going to say it like this. And so I feel like for a long time, not being able to read or write the language was very hindering, because I was like, what does this say? Can somebody just translate this and give it back to me? And now I'm able to know what those words are, and to put them in the way that I want to put them, and to be able to own those words, so that somebody else doesn't come and say like, that's not the proper grammar. I'm like, yeah, that's my word, that's my poetry. So
that's another reason why I love poetry, though, because I was an ESL kid too, and it just felt like I could kind of decide how I wanted a line break to look or whatever. It was just like, this is an artistic decision, but then it also encouraged me to write. So then I had this like way of like teaching you the language as well, and teaching you to love the language and the interplay between that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have dyslexia, so that makes poetry the most accessible art form for me.
Yeah,
it could be short, it can be whatever it want. I am able to make it. So yeah. Katsy, do you want to kick us off with?
okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be reading a poem called A Little Too Much. Normally I perform it on stage with my poetry partner, but today I'll be sitting and reading at my seat. So I'm also going to bring it up in case I forget the words. And every time I do this and I think about MOOCs, I think about the time that I did Laos in the House and I had the piece of paper in front of me and I got nervous and didn't know the words. And then I like stood on stage staring at the paper. And it was like one of those, in my mind, it felt like it happened very quickly where I was like, should I get the paper? Should I not get the paper? But like MOOCs reminded me like, man, she was up there for like, I don't know, like 30 seconds deciding if she was going to go get the paper or like keep going. And I was like, really? It was that long? And I felt like in my mind, I was like very split, like, oh, should I just remember the words or should I pick it up? Anyway, so it's on my computer now. So you guys don't have to see it. So I can just perform it as is. So anyway, yeah, so like I said, this is normally a poem that I would perform with my poetry partner, Michelle, as part of Yellow Rage. And so if you can imagine that this is a very loud poem, but also like some of the lines are meant to be emphasized because we will say it together, or like we alternate lines and like she says it and I don't say it. So I'm going to read it all so that you get a sense of, I guess, my part of the poem. Anyway, so it's called A Little Too Much. You act a little too black. Could you be more of this? Could you be less of that? You seem a little too white the way you walk and talk. Is it just ain't right? Is it spoken word, poetry, or is it rap? So you found the features on my face, figured out my race. Now you think you know my place. What do you really know when you just met me? If I don't make your first impression, then don't second guess me. Your racial profiling obsessed me, but I won't let it get the best of me. I guess you're trying to test me because you could have came correctly. Want to assess me directly, then get to know the rest of me. How insulting, disturbing. The first thing you're observing is the color of my skin and what you think you know about it. Like you think you know everything, like the karate clutch and the chopstick clutch, like speaking in the language. That should be a must, like on the spot translations. That would be a plus. But at the same time, it's like you're making a fuss, like my English is too fluent, my attitude's too tough, like what you thought you and your people did, like I'm doing too much, like you're telling me I'm not Asian enough, like I give a fuck when you're not even Asian in the first place. You never were and you never will be. Why don't you listen, asshole? I still get called Americanized by Americanized because my hair and eyes and getting recognized the varying size, shapes, and colors. So American guys tell American lies asking, you don't look American, so how come you got an American accent? Act like you got some sense when act like you got some sense when acceptance is of the essence, when you can't reject my presence. Since when should I be so kind you will put that shit behind you? I'm not you seeing eye dog blind fool saying my eyes are small, but that's you that can't see. Too much white in your history, fucking with your mental. Okay, so you know we're not all Chinese. Why you still calling us Oriental? Maybe it's accidental, and maybe a joke confidential, and maybe it'll just be another accidental incident with accidentally knocked out dentures. Repercussion is consequential, whatever, get over it. You still ain't been through what I've been through. It's 2021. I'm not getting into the midst of it. I'm not here to give you the gist of it. What you see is what you get. What you can't see, you'll never get. I missed the part. You act a little too black. Could you be more of this? Could you be less of that? You seem a little too white the way you walk and talk. Is it just ain't right? Is it? So I'm nice with my words. So I fight with my words. So I find it absurd. It's the first time you've heard I'm angry and I'm Asian, because the occasion is that you get away with saying you're all about equality when your philosophy is hypocrisy. Make oppression your obsession. Just give the impression by making suggestions. The life I live with is one full of privilege. Paint a picture of what should be, what I should say, where I should sit. The back of the bus is calling me, but insists up front is where I fit. Then call shots by proclaiming that what you do is called protesting and what I do is called complaining, when just yesterday, we called it the same thing. A demand for respect, maybe that's as close as it gets. What's the point in arguing over petty shit like who's more oppressed, been more repressed, depressed from distress, who deserves reparation, who deserves less? You call that progress? Well, Audre Lorde said it best. There is no hierarchy to oppression, no pyramid of pain pitting people against people competing for pity. What a pity when people put a price on pain. No matter how you stack it up or break it down, it always comes around to the same old, same old. Somebody somewhere is somewhat uncomfortable with somebody else. Me, I'm comfortable with who I am, so you can check for yourself. So no, I'm neither black nor white, but in a gray area called Asian America. Just another mix to add to your race theory hysteria. My English will always be a little too good for you. my voice a little too loud for you, my tongue a little too sharp for you, my eyes a little too round for you, my pride a little too strong for you, my strength a little too deep for you, my Asian a little too American for you. So no, I can't be more of this, and no, I won't be less of that. This is what it is. Get used to it. That was really hard to sit and, you know, like, because I'm so used to standing and like, and when you have like a poetry partner, she gives you a break from all the lines so you can like breathe. So it's like, oh, I gotta say her lines too. So it's like, oh, okay.
Oh,
Cassie, you could have done it standing up. We would have
No,
welcomed it.
no, I was telling Hedy that I if I stand away, like I'm in a room, I'm in a big room, so you might not be able to hear me. So I was like, I want to be attached to the mic. You know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say some lines really fast, and I want you guys to be able to hear it. So, yeah.
you were amazing.
Thank you.
I would love to see you perform that with or without your partner. But you know, I close my eyes and I can see you doing it. So
You can watch. Cassie is YouTubeable. So or
people recorded a performance. That's fine.
and you and Michelle redid your poems Listen Up Asshole.
Listen, asshole.
Listen Asshole as and bringing in community to help with that. Can you plug in the link to that video in there? Because was this an answer to the Atlanta shootings or the anti-Asian violence?
It was inspired. So the poem was written like 20 years ago. So the poem itself was just like a response to like all the things that people ask us all the time, we get annoyed at, and like sort of being able to like put it all in one answer. And then you know, when the Atlanta shootings happened, I feel like Michelle and I were in a different place. Like we were, I guess we had been angry for this whole time, like prior, but then like when all that happened, you know, we were in mourning, right? And so it was really hard to not to be angry, but to perform angry, you know? And so for a lot of people though, they discovered the poem, the Deaf Poetry Jam performance that was online, and like for them it really resonated with them. So for some people they've seen it already, and for to rediscover it was really helpful for them. And then some people had never seen it before either, and they were like, wow, this is so relevant and appropriate for right now. And so I think like when we saw it again this year, it was almost like we were watching not ourselves. Because usually when you watch your own performance, you're thinking about other things like, oh, I should have said that differently, or like, why did I wear that sweater or whatever. But then I feel like it was so far removed, and in the situation of the Atlanta shootings, it was nice to see it and to I guess finally understand how other people have experienced it, you know? And so like for me, it was like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, this poem. Yeah, I did write this. That's right. And so Anita, who is also a poet and a filmmaker, with her husband, they run Revolt Studio. I don't have the link. I don't have the link to the new video. I don't know if that's what you just shared, Mux, but
I did, yeah.
okay. So they wanted to reimagine the poem, but to include people so that it wasn't, you know, the one that exists now is just like us, we go on stage and then like there's a crowd in Brooklyn and they like whatever, but like to redo the poem and to also have people that are in our community, but also like our own daughters who weren't even born yet when we wrote the poems to like be in the video, and to sort of like they all say it and they all like are a part of it. So I feel like it was nice to see the reinvention of it in this new light that we had for it. So
I love it. It's creating new legacy. It's also adding other people into this legacy that you're creating. It's beautiful.
I know we have only 6 minutes left, and I do have a last poem.
Yeah. Would
If
you
I
like
can
to
just,
share? Do
what?
you want to share your
Yeah,
poem?
I will just interject a little bit that I'm doing another reading in September through Unite Cloud, and that does address the shootings of the women, the Asian women who were killed in Atlanta, but putting it in the context of her stories and the history of Asian women in America. So I'll send it out to all of you. I think I have your emails. But so we have time to do my last poem. I don't see any questions in there. Oops.
Please do your poem.
Right. And this is actually an answer to your question that you put in the email in terms of, whoops, where did it go? Sorry. And what connects us as Southeast Asian poets. And what I want to address is, how does it connect me with the three of you? And I take the Mekong River as that connection. It's the largest, one of the largest rivers in the world. And it starts in the Himalayas, coming down from China, going through Tibet, and then southern China, where my great-grandfather came from, then through Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and then Vietnam, to the Mekong Delta, the rice bowl of Southeast Asia flowing out to South China Sea. And I take it from a journal entry that I have, the Mekong. My first view of the Mekong. Journal entry, September 21st, 1974, Vientiane, Laos. It is muddy, it seems, all year round. Now it is quite high with a very swift current. I walked back past monasteries and along the Mekong bank. They were building little pavilions along the river to mark the end of the Buddhist monks' land. 1974 Laos is in the cusp of change that will impact us all. I am 26 years old. I am the age of your mothers, for the three of you, at that time. Journal entry on Tuesday, October 1st, 1974, Bangkok. A Thai Navy captain chats me up. Do you have a husband, fiance, boyfriend, the usual crap? Treats me to coffee. Okay, I let him practice his English. I'm waiting for a friend. He calmly states with some bravado, I've shot people trying to cross the Mekong. He tells me he's trained under American generals. He says, call me up and I'll bring you to Satalip. We can watch Navy maneuvers. I shrug, I say, I don't know, but that is not where I will go. I will go to the riverbanks of the Mekong. It swirls gray and dirty, and I see in my imagination, I am that refugee, your mother, your aunt, your mother's friends. Catching in my heart, wide-eyed in fear, the smell of sour milk assaulting my nostrils, I grasp the plastic bottles strung together in rough vines, barely floating on the Mekong. I close my eyes and the water takes me. The river voices numbs my memories of dark places, of strange jungle sounds of children strangled to keep their voices down, or they drown. My toes skim the riverbed, smooth pebbles awake my senses. I am alone. That's it.
Thank you, Hedy. Thank you. You said this poem was from an actual journal entry?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. For me, a lot of the poems that I write, it has to be imagined, especially ones when it's about that time, when they're about that time in my family's history, it has to be imagined. So I think it's so lovely that you have these journal entries that you could go back and.
But it's both also. It's me and it's imagined, because I am not a refugee. I did not come as a refugee. I come as an immigrant. But I am the age of your mothers.
Mm-hmm.
For younger generations, I'm the age of their grandmothers.
Right. Yeah. You an OG, just say it, you an OG, the original gangster. Before we go, we do have a question from an audience member. This is from Oluwatobi, and the question is, what advice do you have for young poets? So you got to make it fast. We only got a couple minutes. What advice do you have for young poets, Katsy, Denise, and Hedy?
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Just go out and do it. There's no other experience except for doing it. So just do it.
Oh God, I know for me, focusing on learning has been really important, because I think like you can get in your head and, you know, start worrying about status and like all of these other things. But when I think about like, okay, learning and what I can do better or different, that's when I really focus.
Mm-hmm. Right. Have the audacity and learn more. Yes. My advice would be to stalk your favorite poets. Stalk them professionally, not in real life, like not in person. Don't do that. You know, that's creepy. But if there's a poet that you admire their career, their work, go to their website, look at their resumes, look at their CVs, see where they've been published, see where they've taken workshops, what kind of awards they've received, grants, fellowships, like that. And yeah, and just and let that guide you and guide your career, because maybe you have a poem that is similar to the poem that they had published in a magazine, and maybe that magazine will want to publish your stuff. So yes, right. Have the audacity and all the confidence, learn and stalk. Those are the advice we have for people. Any other parting words, Hedy, Denise, Katsy, before we let people go?
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Yep. And remember we are going to save this chat because, well, one, there's some great conversations happening. And then also Hedy needs it for her final report for the grant.
Thank you again to Central Minnesota Arts Board. And there are other amazing resources in Central Minnesota. There's Lyricality, Tracy, I see you. There's Unite Cloud, and within your own spaces, there are organizations. All we have to do is go for it.
Yes, thank you. And before we go, there was one last thing I wanted the panelists to give as a gift to our audience, which is, can you provide a writing prompt for our audience? Just a writing prompt as a gift, because we want people to leave here with something sticky going.
The first time I knew that I was different was when.
Let me type that in.
Yeah, I'll type mine in.
Mine will be your first love.
I wrote, write a letter to your 5-year-old self. What would you tell her?
Books. You're a prompt person.
I am a prompt person. My prompt is, after the 8th knock on the door, ... Because, you know, horror. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks for joining Women of the Sea. Thank you for joining us, and keep in touch. Follow us on all the different social medias. I think we're all Googleable. So you could just Google us and find us. And I hope you go and write and share your words with the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to see you, Paying. Oh, and she left.